Good morning, everyone,
Or good afternoon.
or good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yeah, it's been a long morning.
Yeah, it's been a very long afternoon.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I'll start off by just introducing ourselves. So I'm Sean Miller. I'm the Northeast Regional Director for Young Invincibles.
And I'm Lisa Nishimura. I use pronouns they, she. I'm the engagement coordinator for Young Invincibles.
And we're so grateful to have all of you here today in community to talk about some things that are really important to us as young adults and as Young Invincibles. There's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of challenges that young adults are facing throughout New York City, throughout New York State. And as we continue to, can y'all hear me on Zoom okay? Can I get a thumbs up just to make sure? Thank you, Mercy. I can see you. Okay. So as we continue, recovering from the global pandemic and the exacerbation of so many systemic inequities, long-standing and severe systemic barriers that young folks face, the challenges that young adults have are really rising exponentially. There's a housing crisis. There's limited tenant protections. There's skyrocketing rent costs. And the cost of living in New York City is the highest it's ever been. On top of all these things, we have issues like the student debt crisis and lack of cancellation. We have severe defunding of our public colleges and university systems. We have widespread food insecurity, lack of access to affordable health care and mental health services, limited access to workforce development opportunities, and more. And underlying all of these issues, we know there's a long trend of marginalizing or tokenizing young adult voices in the political process at every step. And so we're here today to center those voices in these conversations, in these policy issues, and act now to protect and uplift young adults, to ensure that young adults have a secure economic future, a secure future in terms of healthcare, and that all New Yorkers truly can live in a world where we have economic opportunity and equity. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to our tremendous first speaker, who is the prime sponsor of the New Deal for CUNY legislation, big part of our policy platform that we've been pushing for a while. He's also the chair of the Senate Finance Committee and a senior member of the Higher Education Committee, who's been doing some tremendous work advocating for young adults and higher education equity throughout New York. So please give a warm welcome to Senator Andrew Gennardes.
Thank you. You gave me a promotion there. It's the Senate Budget Committee, not Finance Committee, but I won't tell Senator Krueger. That's okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to be here. I am Andrew Gennardes. I'm a member of the New York State Senate, proudly representing the 26th district, which spans the neighborhoods from Bay Ridge to Dumbo and everywhere in between. Born and raised in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is my home. It's the center of my universe. It is the center of the universe. And I'm just really glad to be here. And Sean laid out a whole bunch of the challenges that young people are facing, not just in New York, but across the country today. I can't speak to all of them because in this job, every day is like drinking out of a fire hose. And so I'm going to speak about some of the things that I've been trying to work on up in the legislature with Young Invincibles and a whole bunch of other partner organizations to try to make a difference for young people and try to really help shape our state and shape the laws that govern our state so that it gives young people a fighting chance to be able to live the lives that they want to live. But first and foremost, what really grounds me and centers me in all of this is the fact that I am a proud graduate of the City University of New York. I went to Hunter College, and that helped shape and inform so much of the advocacy that I do up in Albany around things like the New Deal for CUNY. But it's more than just the fact that I went to a CUNY school. I would not be here. I say this all the time. I would not be here in this role, in this job, were it not for two things. The fact that I went to CUNY Hunter and the fact that my parents met at Brooklyn College so many years before. So CUNY has really had an outside shape on my life, influence on my life. And I really take that to heart. And it's because of the role that CUNY has played in my life, both personally and professionally, that I try to keep the mission of equity in higher education at the center of everything that we do up in Albany. And so I'm going to go over a couple of things that we've been working on in that equity space over the last 4 years and kind of lay the groundwork for what we have left to do in the years ahead. So first, let's start with the New Deal for CUNY, which I'm really proud of because it's a historic piece of legislation that would abolish tuition at CUNY. I mean, that itself is significant and huge, bringing CUNY back to its true roots as the People's University in the city of New York, while also mandating the kind of staff to student ratios for academic advisors, mental health counselors, career counselors, and full-time professors that ensure that every CUNY student has what they need to thrive, not just on campus, but beyond. Investing in institutions like CUNY is not only the right thing to do, it's the smartest thing to do because CUNY consistently ranks amongst the top colleges, not in New York, but in the country for promoting social mobility. It moves almost 6 times as many low-income students into the middle class and beyond for every Ivy League in our country combined. Now, that is just a stunning statistic. 6 times more students graduating the CUNY system make it into the middle class than all of the Ivy League schools combined right here, this resource, this gem here in New York. Young Invincibles has been a tremendous partner in our campaign for the New Deal for CUNY, but we also work on not just funding the university the way it needs to be funded, making sure that it operates the way it needs to operate. And that includes our new bill that we introduced 2 years ago to create liaisons for students who are facing housing insecurity on our CUNY campuses, to help them navigate the different financial aid programs and connect them with basic resources so that students know where to turn to for help. It's tough being a college student today. All the requirements, you got to carry a job, you have to get to campus, you got to worry about your MetroCard, you got to do all these things on top of the fact that so many of our students are facing housing insecurity. Having counselors on our campuses to provide students with that help is really just a no-brainer to me. If we pass this bill, which I'm hopeful we can pass this year, New York will be following in the footsteps of 9 other states that are now seeing improved outcomes for graduation rates and for completion rates for students who are experiencing housing insecurity on their campuses. When we're talking about equity in higher education, we're not just talking about CUNY. We're talking about really every institution of higher education in our state. Any student good enough to get into a school should be afforded the opportunity to go to that school. And that means having making college more affordable for everyone and having a robust financial aid system where money is actually finding its way into the pockets of students and families who need it. Right now, for example, we estimate that there's about $3.6 billion in unclaimed Pell money left on this table by New York students who could use that money to put it towards their college education. They just don't know that it's there. And so one of the things that we're working on with YI is to promote a universal FAFSA requirement so that students graduating high school have to complete their FAFSA in order to know what money they're eligible for so they can take that money and then put it towards their college degree. 6 other states have done this around the country, and they have seen nearly, in some cases, 84% enrollment rate increases from students who otherwise would not have gone to school. Last thing I want to point out here in our equity campaign, it's not just about access, it's not just about the economics, it's also about making sure that we take down the barriers that make it harder for students to get into some of our top universities here in the state. And that's why, and one of the worst offenders of that system is the system of legacy admissions, affirmative action for privileged kids, as I like to call it, which gives a leg up to applicants who are related to an alumni of a college or university in the admissions process. It's used by the most selective colleges to weed out students that they don't want to educate. We want to tear that barrier down and make colleges across the board equal an opportunity for everyone who is eligible and who is qualified for those colleges. The urgency of this moment could not be greater because of what the Supreme Court has done with the affirmative action rulings earlier this year in the Students for Fair Admissions cases. So if the Supreme Court is going to say that we can't have affirmative action to help promote diversity on our campuses, we should not tolerate a system of affirmative action for privileged kids that only favors the privileged, the elite, and the wealthy in our schools. And so hopeful that this year, with the coalition that we've built around fair admissions, we can actually be the second state in the country to end legacy admissions on our college campuses once and for all. And then lastly, because I know I've taken up more time than I was allotted, I just want to say it's conversations like this that are actually the genesis for the ideas that we work on up in Albany. The things that I just talked about, I only highlighted 3 or 4 things. Those don't come from me. Those don't come from my staff. They come from organizations and partners like you all the people who are experiencing these issues in real time on the ground, who are working together in community with stakeholders to bring these issues to our attention, but not just to complain about them, but to actually offer solutions. The Homelessness Liaison Bill was a bill that was brought to us by our YI partner. Working on legacy admissions was brought to us by other partners that we work with in the Education Reform Now movement and other groups like that. New Deal for CUNY came to us from the CUNY Rising Coalition and the PSC. It's because of your advocacy and your organizing that we're able to do the things that we've done so far and continue to take on the fights that are yet to be fought. And so my plea to all of you all is to stay engaged, stay active, stay advocating, stay agitating, because that is how we actually affect positive change in the halls of power, whether it's at City Hall, our state capitol in Albany, or even at the national level down in Washington, D.C. So thank you all for having me. I know you're going to have a great day of conversations to come, and I'm here to be a partner with each and every one of you in all the things that we have left to do to make New York a place where every young person has the opportunity to not just survive, but thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. That was tremendous. So next, we're going to turn things over to Zoom, and we're going to welcome our next opening speaker. I'd like to introduce it's my honor, my great honor, to also introduce the youngest New York City councilman in New York City Council history, Councilmember Chi Say.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. So sorry I couldn't be. I think there's a bit of feedback.
Yeah. Lisa, please mute the laptop on her. Oh, okay. Can you mute the tablet? Okay, let's try that. Testing 1 2 1 2. That should be good.
Check. How does that sound?
Much better.
Okay, cool. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm New York City Council member Chi Osei. I have the great honor and privilege of representing the 36th district in the City Council, which consists of the neighborhoods of Bed-Stuy and Northern Crown Heights in Brooklyn. I'm so sorry I couldn't be in person with you all today. I'm sure we would have been able to dodge some of the technical difficulties, but we still live in a Zoom world as it stands. It's such an honor to be able to speak to you all about the importance of education, as well as the importance and power of young people. I took a very unconventional path to politics. I grew up in New York City, went off to college for 3 semesters before my father passed away, and I had to drop out of school and never finished school after that. I ended up working in restaurants after leaving California, then worked in nightlife and in some parts of the fashion industry until the pandemic hit. And it flipped that entire world upside down like it did many other industries at the time of the pandemic. I had no idea what to do in life. I think I was at a standstill, and all I could do was wallow in my quarantine at the time until I saw these horrific images and videos of a man by the name of George Floyd being murdered at the hands of law enforcement. And obviously, as a Black person growing up in America, this wasn't my first time seeing police kill an innocent Black person. But I believe that because I was in quarantine and unable to look away from these images and videos I was seeing, I wanted to do something about it. So I remember leaving my quarantine, going out to protest. And each day that I went out protesting, I started using my voice more and more. People started following what I was saying. I ended up founding an activist collective called Warriors in the Garden, and we organized some of the largest protests that took place in New York City at the time. And one of our main goals was to hold the New York City Council and New York City government accountable, especially when it came to how much money they invested within what I consider our bloated New York Police Department budget. When I saw that my council member didn't vote on the budget or negotiate the budget in the way that I would have, I said F it and decided to run for office myself. I was 22 years old at the time. I've always been interested and engaged in politics in one way, shape, or form, but never thought I would enter this realm on my own accord. I launched a year-long campaign, ran against a 40-year Democratic establishment, but utilized youth culture and worked with a lot of young people who turned out a record number of young people to vote in a local city council race. And I ended up winning and becoming the youngest member of the New York City Council. I tell my origin story to lay out, I guess, the groundwork in terms of the topic of education, right? I think that traditionally we are so geared as young people to go to high school, go to middle school, and then get ready to go to college, right? And I don't want to take today to say that young people should not go to college, but I want folks to know that there are so many options that exist today, and the responsibility and the power is within your autonomy and choosing your own destiny, as well as your own path and what you are bound to do within life. If you want to go to college, that is something that you should definitely put all your eggs in your basket to doing and making sure that that's something that you accomplish. If you want to go to trade school, that is also acceptable and something that should be supported, by your mentors, your elders, whoever you are discussing with your future plans on. If you want to, take a gap year, I don't think young people should be rushed to go to college, right? I did end up going to school. I had to leave, but I think one of the core lessons that I've learned throughout my years of education that brought me to political office was how to interact with those around me, right? Not only that, but to read critically and to be critical of power and those who were both educating me as well as those who were in power, whether on the political level or not. And that's something that I think I exhibit every single day as an elected official. As a young elected official, I was always someone who, again, was very critical of my elders, but to a certain extent, but also those who were in power. And I think that that prompted me to run for office. And I think it's something that I live with every single day. I think that something that I'm asked often is, who inspires you, especially when it comes to like a specific individual, what elected official or whatnot. And I can never point to a specific person who's in power, but the people that I point to is the youth inspires me, right? I feel like there are various different crises that are impacting young people, most especially within New York City. Rents are too damn high. I find that the climate crisis is nigh, and our generation is going to bear the brunt of that. And through all of that adversity, I've seen young people forge their own paths within various different industries, whether it's art and business and politics and fashion. I find that a lot of the tools that are disposable, that are at our hands, are really useful in propelling us forward. And young people inspire me in terms of seeing how they take flight in their own unconventional ways. So thank you again for having me. I really just wanted to bring some brief remarks. Again, I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person, and I hope that we can connect sometime again in the future. By the way, if you are speaking to me, I cannot hear.
We're all applauding.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, can everyone hear me here? Trying to make sure this is. And you online? Yes.
That's the thumbs up. Great. Thank you so much, Councilmember Osei. Apologies again for the technical difficulties. When he mentioned who inspires him, I was thinking Councilmember Osei inspires me incredibly. I don't know about y'all, but I could barely get out of bed before 9 a.m. at 25, and to be elected to the New York City Council at 23, I believe, if I got that correct, is such an incredible feat. Next, I'm going to turn things over to our esteemed final keynote speaker. He's someone who's been advocating for equity and justice in every part of advocate, as his title reflects. Please give a warm welcome to New York City Public Advocate Monty Williams.
Peace and blessings, love, everybody. How's everyone doing? So I think they cut the time after the speech was written. I might go through the whole thing. You guys even bear with me if that's all right. It's exciting to be here with everybody. I was working young people. I like people. When we young, I was mature anymore. I keep changing the age to try to make it match. But I've been happy not only to see the work Young Invincibles have been doing in the past few years, but to partner with the inspiring youth to make it possible and driving change forward in so many of the key areas that people need to live healthy lives. I also want to commend all of you for engaging with the world, for working through good, particularly at a young age. It took me a long time to figure out what I was going to do in the world. I'm still trying to figure it out. How I was going to create the change that I wanted as a young person. My love is acting, actually. I want to be acting. I have Tourette's syndrome, ADHD. When I'm acting, kind of that goes away. So that was a space I wanted to be in. And my heroes were Spider-Man, X-Men, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, kind of all heroes that I wanted to emulate. And when I got into college at CUNY, to the University of New York, I really began to see the intersection of what I wanted and how politics is related with that. You can see it very clearly on the campus as well, looking like a microcosm of the world. Inspiration from my mom, who took me to marches and made me, people too young to know there was a show called Lincoln Days that I was forced to watch. I didn't want to watch it then. I'm glad she made us watch it. But those are the things that kind of framed who I was. My parents came from the Caribbean, the first generation American in Small Island areas. But Black history in general in this country has always been pushed forward as a tactic of what we can do when we push forward. So I got in public service when I was in college, retained and strengthened my commitment to building up young people, building up communities, providing them the tools and opportunities to succeed. I first was a community organizer long before anybody knew what a community organizer was. Barack Obama wasn't elected yet. My mother used to get a real job. It wasn't a real job. Thankfully now folks know what that was. I ended up running against an incumbent. I didn't want to. There was term limits that were passed. The city council was term limits. So I was told I was crazy for even trying to incumbent. But I ran, I won with 6 votes race, and I've been trying to cause as much trouble as possible since that opportunity arose. And I tried to bring my experience and passion into government. I was told that I had to choose between being an active official, and I said I don't. That's official, so I'm not going to choose. I really put my passion into that, and I'm proud to say we've been really productive. As a councilman, we passed more bills than any councilman. Public advocate, thanks to working with the council. Somebody on. So I'll try to speak up, try to keep you up. As public advocate, we passed more bills actually than all public advocates combined. So it's really important to show that activism is not going to stop you from doing the work that needs to be done. Some of the key issues that we're talking about today include economic opportunity, educational advantage for young people. That's been a key part of what I've been trying to do as a council member. Probably had the largest expansion of summer youth employment. It was a very big priority of mine when I was in council. Even as public advocate, shout out to the council members who have increased that. It's a foundation of many of my pushes. We learned that the #1 way to cut violent crime is actually giving a job to young people. But this is about more than public safety. It's about a paycheck. It's about skills gained. It's about confidence earned, which is why we're sponsoring legislation to create a similar program, the Youth Employment Education Program, open to all young people, regardless of immigration status, and focusing on the skills that they will be needing as essential young people in the workforce. While students are in school, I'm committed to helping them access mental health care. Mental health has been incredibly important to me personally and my team. I'm pushing for young people to have the kind of access to care that I wish I had as a student. I've been very open about my mental health. I've been a senior therapist for 8 years now. Thanks to that therapist and my beliefs and faith, I'm now married with kids. So it's something that's not talked about in certain circles. We gotta talk about it. You go to the doctor, you go to the dentist, get a mental health check, and it's all good. But I worry that investment is not secure or expensive enough. Amid threats of steep budget cuts, services are going to be lost. One area in which budget cuts have already been devastating is CUNY, the #1 path for young New Yorkers to attain higher education at a used to be affordable rate. CUNY was one of my office's first focuses. We published a report highlighting the impacts of cuts and the need for investment. The need has only grown. As I mentioned, I'm a CUNY grad, and I know it's essential to keep providing funding. By the way, CUNY used to be free until the 1970s. That's when the complexion of students changed. It gets connected. And the largest expansion of CUNY happened during the Great Depression. And they haven't moved it. That's because they said we have to educate the population if we want to move forward. So I want to tell you this. Economic security and opportunity, beginning with some of your jobs, which is the issue close to me, and moving to higher education and the foundation for supporting students during their education. It's critical for both individual and citywide success in the economy and beyond. Because equally as important as any one issue is how they are all interconnected. The quality, housing, AIDS, mental health, that mental health services are a part of achieving education equity. Education equity requires realizing education and opportunities beyond it. Everyone's skills are different. Everyone's approach is different. Do what works for you and have a government that enables and empowers that. That's something you can do. And now's the time to explore what drives you, to gain the tools that you need. It's okay not to know exactly what you want to do. As I mentioned, I'm still trying to figure it out. What's important that you keep trying, you keep moving forward. And hearing about all the work that Young Invincibles has done, I'm very confident your voices or efforts will not only, inform our city and my team, but ensure youth in this room are making decisions about issues they care most about. I know folks often say that young people are leaders of tomorrow. They're actually the leaders of today. You should be treated as such and move as such. Too often young people's voices are discounted in the dialogue with elected leaders. It's amazing how many youth programs are developed, people developing them. Possibly elected officials focus on voters, on tools, or the established political powers. It's a factor that many of issues elected officials are debating, but will affect young people long after the elected officials voting on those issues are gone. It's really not a good system, in my opinion. We can't continue to govern crisis to crisis. We need to plan for and invest for the future. Government has to be accountable to young people for all of the reasons I just mentioned, because there's the youth, the students who are often feeling the impacts of our decisions most closely and for the longest, and people who are closest to the problems usually have the best solution. The public advocacy office has a mandate to provide accountability, researching issues, raising concerns, raising our voices. The government does not need spending to serve people, especially those most marginalized in the need. For too long, the voices of young people have been marginalized, but advancing agendas like the one you're putting on is going to help change that, help amplify those voices. I know this summit is to address the state of young New York, and thanks to the youth on this call and who are here, I believe that many of the systems serving our youth are not in the state we would like them to be. The energy, the passion, and enthusiasm that young people are bringing to address these problems makes me more confident. The last thing I want to say is, I know there are systems of inequity that are in place. This is for another speech. I believe they're in place on purpose. And we don't have to reform the system. We actually need new. So we have to take it out, put another one in. And that makes it a little bit more difficult. None of us are responsible for the system we got, but all of us are responsible for the system that we give. It's really important. It's also really important to honor the path that people got. Honor that path will be different than ours, but we have to honor that path. And we all have to know we all have implicit biases that we have to work on. As a cisgender, straight black man, I have biases, even myself. And so I want people to be comfortable with when we hear, we have to work on our unconscious bias. And people hear different things. Until that, sometimes someone hears you calling them a racist. And I'm like, no, I'm not. You might be, you don't take it off the table. But that's not what I'm saying right now. I'm saying you have an unconscious bias. You have to try to work with it. The last thing was, sometimes people fight the power and say that the system is wrong and needs to be changed. And they're oftentimes saying system is wrong because I or someone that looks like me is not in power. And those are two different things. Right now we have, and I don't want people to confuse persons in power with people. Right now, I'll use just Black as an example. There are more Black elected officials in power than we've ever had in New York State. And that's great to work on that. But at the same time that was happening, 200,000 Black folks left the vote. And last year we had more homeless folks dying in the street, mostly Black, than we ever had. And so sometimes, whether it is by gender or by faith, or by citizenship, or immigration, culture, we want to see ourselves there, but that's not enough. The answer to our problems is not simply switching out people for people look like us. If that's the option, diversity or not, I choose diversity. But I want to get people in there that are realize we have to shape it. We have to change the structure of labor, wages, and wealth, how that impacts communities. And I think and believe that folks are here on that same mission. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So we're going to transition in just a minute over to our first session, but I just wanted to say thank you to New York City Public Advocate Tamara Williams, to our other keynote speakers. Thank you for joining us this morning. I was also thinking, how lucky we are to be in New York City, a place that has a New York City Public Advocate, but also to have someone who truly embodies that position inside and out. Young Invincibles, is a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, but also can't help but wonder how fantastic it would be to have folks like them who are advocates through and through in some of these positions where we're hearing budget cuts, such as the New York City mayor and the governor. With that being said, we are going to transition over to our first session. Our first session today is going to be on higher education basic needs, addressing inequity and access in issues like food insecurity, housing security, and mental health. And with that, I'll pass things over to our young advocates who are in the room. Our young advocates are truly the stars here today. They are college students, oftentimes, sometimes graduate students. Many of them have multiple part-time jobs, yet they are still showing up. They are still advocating. They are representing New York City. They are representing various parts of upstate New York, and they are here today to tell you about their experience, about the experiences of their peers, and how we can push to have a more equitable future for all New Yorkers, but especially for young folks, and what actions we can take in order to create that reality, starting with very real budget items, policy items that are in the legislature or forthcoming, or ideas for new policy items, perhaps, for new things that we'd like to see. So with all that being said, I'm going to pass things over. We have a couple people who are going to be here in person, and we have some folks joining us on Zoom. We're doing it hybrid to try to make it as accessible as possible, excuse me, for folks in New York City, and especially for our folks that are upstate. Many of them have finals and final papers coming up, so trying to make sure that they can all join us as best as they can. So please welcome our first group, and I'll turn things over so that they can also introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. Our group is called the Basic Needs Group, and we'll be discussing mental health, homelessness, food insecurities among college students. This is just a brief overview of our presentation today, where you're going to meet our presenters, do a short little icebreaker, and we will get into discussion of basic needs of college students.
Everybody, my name is Patrice. I'm the communications lead. I am a sophomore at Evans College studying business administration.
Everybody, I am Melissa Vicente, and I'm the policy lead at the City College of New York.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mercy. I'm the engagement and field lead, and I go to Cornell University in New York.
Hi, everyone, I'm Tiana and I'm in training / consumer equity. I'm a junior at John Jay Studying Services.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel. I am a senior at the University of Albany. For our short little icebreaker, we'll be doing a question where you can ask, if you could treat yourself to a meal, what would it be? You could talk amongst yourselves, and either all who are virtual, you can put it in the chat as well.
Anybody want to Yeah. I'll let you know the vegetarian. Everything else. Does anybody want to use the mic and give us your answer? Right, please. Nobody wants to share their meal?
Yeah, I'll walk around. I'm actually gonna get it tomorrow. There's this place by my house that sells these salmon cheesesteaks. I live in Philly. So, you know, people think cheesesteak and there's always beef and this place actually has the salmon, so I'm gonna try that. Yeah. What's that? Crazy.
Well, everyone, please welcome Stanley, our media
Thank you all for sharing and just discussing your treats that you would like to have. We'd like to segue the next section into Mercy.
All right, thank you, Rachel. And I see so many good options. I see a seafood boil. I said the lobster surf and turf from Red Lobster, and like these are all making me really hungry. But it turns out, while these are all really luxury treats, these are all amazing meals. The reality in New York State is that a lot of college students don't have access to even luxury meals or even just a basic meal to sustain themselves. And that's what we'll be talking about, food insecurity in higher education. And we're going to start with a definition of what is food insecurity. And Oxford Languages defines food insecurity as the condition of not having access to sufficient food or food of an adequate quality, which is a very important aspect as well, to meet one's basic needs. And what would this look like in an average college student's life? That would mean eating breakfast and then not being able to eat anything else until later that day for dinner, only eating snacks when you're hungry because that's what you can afford or have access to, pizza every day, which is a very common thing in dining halls. And while that's technically a meal, it's not adequate to meet your needs, and it's definitely not good to sustain yourselves when you're going to work, you're going to class, you're going to anything else. And also one that I've experienced myself, sleep for dinner, which obviously is not good for a college student. And here we have a real testimony from a college student at Cornell University. And when asked what he would eat in a day, Rasant Michelle said, "Usually I get a Hot Pocket. Some days it means that I'm more hungry towards the end of my day, but what else can you do? If I have to, I just get another Hot Pocket. They're quick and they're cheap." And while this could be a surprising reality to some, it so happens that it's very common in a lot of college students' lives. I know I've seen myself there. For me personally, it's pizza bites, but that's not especially for a college student that's doing so much brain activity and also just physical, it's not enough to sustain yourself. And it's actually a very common reality for many college students. Actually, 1 in 4 or 23% of undergraduate students are experiencing food insecurity currently, and 12% of graduate students are experiencing food insecurity. That means that in total, more than 4 million college students in higher education are experiencing food insecurity, and then 2.3 million more students are experiencing marginal food insecurity. So then, what are the causes of food insecurity in higher education? The main causes include a rising cost of housing and tuition, which are at an all-time high right now. Also, meal plan prices, which are $4,500 on average, and that means that it's $18.75 for a college student to feed themselves per day, which is much higher than the average $10 of an adult that is not in higher education to feed themselves per day. Also, inconsistent food availability. During school breaks and between semesters, many colleges actually close down their dining halls, and that leaves their students to have to wonder where they're going to get their next meal and how. And finally, family responsibilities. Actually, 1 in 5 students are raising children right now. And when you have to provide for other people outside of yourself, that leaves less money for you to feed yourself, which is a reality for many students right now. And here's another testimony from a student at Cornell University. When asked what she does when she can't afford to eat, Ruth Charles Pedro said, "If I have money, I'll buy food to eat or I'll try to cook. But if I don't have money, then I just won't eat," which is usually the case. Other quotes I found interesting from our interview was when I asked her if she knew about the pantry on campus, which is where I go myself. She said, "I believe my school has a pantry. Well, I don't know that we have a pantry. I would just assume that we do, but I've never actually seen one myself." And she also said that she believes that the school has SNAP benefits, but whenever they give flyers, they don't actually say how you can apply or where. And that leads to other causes for food insecurity in higher education that we've identified, which are poor advertising of campus resources. I know myself, I've been at Cornell for 3 years, and I just found out a month ago that we have a food pantry. And when I asked all of my friends who are also experiencing food insecurity, none of them knew that we had a food pantry, where it is, or how we can access it. Also, poor upkeep of campus resources. A lot of CUNY and SUNY students also say that their food pantries, on top of not knowing where it is, when they do find it, it is not properly restacked, and that leaves them to not have access to this resource at all. And finally, a lack of education of resources available to them and how to access them. Many students don't know that they actually are eligible for SNAP, and that is a resource that would really help in accessing food. However, they don't know how to apply or where. And all of this boils down to a lack of funding. So then that leads to our solution, which is the Hunger Free Campus Act, also known as Senate Bill S2913A. And what does the Hunger Free Campus Act does is that the legislation sends funding to CUNY and SUNY schools to help address student hunger on campus. So what does this funding look like? It would mean consistently refilling campus pantries so that many students can access them. It's funding programs to help college students access SNAP, so that way they have another resource that would help them to pay for meals when they can't go to the dining hall, when they can't go to the pantries. It's also funds to offer emergency cash assistance, which some schools have, but it would be great if every school has a resource that would help students when they're in a bind to have that extra cash to be able to feed themselves. And finally, funding to provide free daily meals, which just helps students in accessing that food at any time. So where is this bill right now? It's currently in Assembly Committee, and this bill actually has been passed in many states and many northeastern states such as New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So it's very possible that it could be passed in New York, and it just needs to be uplifted and promoted in order to actually get through the Assembly. All right, I will be passing it on to Patrice, who will be talking about housing insecurity and higher education.
So next slide, please. We're discussing housing insecurity and higher education. So what is housing insecurity? Housing insecurity or instability is a state of not having adequate or stable living arrangements. And this could look like anything, risk of eviction and unsafe and uncomfortable relationships. What does this look like overall? High rent burden, eviction risk, homelessness, overcrowding, unstable housing situations are all factors that tie into housing insecurity. Along with that, we also have inadequate housing conditions, limited access to affordable housing, housing discrimination, and lack of legal protection. So housing instability is a significant issue among CUNY students. Nearly 15% of CUNY's New York Public College students have experienced homelessness even before COVID. So this looks like a high cost of living. New York City has a very high cost of living as is, and this burden really makes students unable to afford adequate housing. Financial constraints, many students face financial difficulties, struggling to cover tuition, living expenses, and the cost of housing all at once. Limited affordable housing options and lack of financial support are also two other factors that tie into it, because it is very difficult for students to access financial aid and have support systems that will allow them to afford school and housing at the same time. And then along with that, we have unstable living conditions. Students might experience homelessness, couch surfing, living in overcrowded, substandard conditions due to financial constraints. So I'll pass this off to Rachel. This is one of the interviews she's done.
As a student, I'm a student assistant also in residential life, where that allows us to have the burden freedom for housing costs and what other expenses we have. But with that, there's also some burdens that come with working for residential life. One of my coworkers, this is her testimony. She spoke that sometimes I don't think about my own mental health due to the constraints that this job has on us.
Been done about this? What resources are available for students facing housing instability? So the resources to combat homelessness, there are financial aid programs that provide scholarships and grants for housing expenses. On-campus housing support provides affordable on-campus housing options and support services to assist students finding suitable accommodations.
I'm sorry, I can't hear anymore.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Oh, we can, yeah. Sorry, Patrice, I cut off from when you started on the slide.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
It's echoing.
Now,
Yes.
there we go. Next slide, please. So what are elected officials doing? Here, I'll pass this off.
Okay, so the first bill that we want to uplift is the Housing Liaison Bill. It's more specifically Senate Bill S 4247, and it's sponsored by Andrew Bernardis, and it's currently in the Education Committee. This bill is important because it's a past legislation that creates liaisons. And it's, if we pass to the next slide, we can see that there's a lot of reasons that it can help students. So it can support at-risk New Yorkers, it can help with financial aid navigation, and it can promote educational equity. And just having a person that can connect you to services and that can be your point of contact is a great way to gain access to a better way, especially if you're struggling. The next bill is Senate Bill S 424. It's also sponsored by Andrew Bernardis. It's also in the Education Committee. This establishes a pilot program under the HESC to increase enrollment, attendance, and success within SUNY and CUNY for students experiencing homelessness. Supporting vulnerable students, breaking the cycle of homelessness, and ensuring equal access to higher education are all just a small portion of the list of how it can help, because especially bills that target the direct students who are struggling, like homeless students, is a way that we can ensure that everybody is having access to education. And if you're experiencing homelessness, then it's so much harder for you to do that. Assembly Bill A4029 establishes liaison officers, which is sort of similar to the bill we just spoke about, but this one is in the Assembly instead of the Senate. And it's sponsored by Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, and it's in the Assembly Committee. So for the same reasons I mentioned earlier, this bill is really important because establishing liaisons is a better way to form coordination between the efforts that you're doing. So it's not leaving it up to the imagination, and students have a point of contact, as mentioned earlier, and it can help them navigate the system and help them establish a way or a plan to get out of the struggles that they're experiencing. The next bill is the FAIR Act. So Fairness in Departmental Expenses Bill. It's currently in the Assembly Committee, and it requires that whoever hired a broker to pay the broker fee instead of tenants, preventing an undue financial burden, especially on low-income young adults who need housing. This bill is important because it's putting the financial burden on somebody who can actually pay for the burden. And as college students who are already struggling, we can't be expected to pay for this on top of all of our expenses with bugs and metro cards and so many other things that we have to deal with. So it supports the educational pursuits, it addresses economic disparities, and it supports college retention rates because we're focusing on what we need to focus on. It's getting our degree and bettering ourselves and not worrying about whether we're going to have a home or not. Assembly Bill 0099 will allow all students enrolling in CUNY to receive free Metro cards. It is sponsored by New York State Representative Iganis Rodriguez, and it has yet to be reintroduced at the City Council, and the last time that there was any traction was in 2018. As a commuting student, I can say that having access to a Metro card is one of the hardest things for us. We use the train every single day, and it's one of the biggest expenses that we have, but we have to make this. So it often means that for students who are struggling accessing food, it's like, do I get my Metro card for the week, or do I go to the store? And it's expensive near college campuses because of gentrification and so many other things. So getting a Metro card can be the difference between getting yourself a meal in between classes and making it to school. So it's a really hard decision for students to make. Yeah, so it would offer financial relief for students. It would mean that there's equal access to education, and it encourages higher education pursuit because we don't have to worry about a way to get to school, and we can focus on what we need to focus on, and that's actually working on our classes and not feeling like we have to choose between our education and a Metro card. And now I'm going to pass it on to Tia.
So we're going to talk about the importance of mental health resources in the higher education system. I want to first start off with what is mental health. And I think mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Our mental health is our daily thoughts, our perspective on the world, which is why it is so important, because every decision that you make is dependent upon your mental health. Mental illnesses are also a part of mental health talks. Mental illnesses are disorders ranging from mild to severe. This can affect a person's way of thinking, seeing themselves, seeing the society around them. And these can come from just genetics or trauma or just experiences in life we can't control. So why is it important for students to have access to So your mental state directly affects your day-to-day experience. A student focusing on school, if a student isn't able to focus on school because of their mental health, then they cannot graduate, they cannot get their classes done, they cannot get their personal day-to-day life activities done. And so individuals without support dealing with intense mental health complications can also lead to substance, which is very common in higher education and home. Students deserve to feel supported in all aspects to excel in the education system. They cannot only be seen for their academic progress. which is key for a lot of generation now.
Oh.
Mental health is a vital part in our self-care. It's not just physical, it's not just emotional. Every hour you have said. And so students need and they deserve that time to dedicate to their mental health. So how does the lack of resources impact students? I actually went through switching from private school to community. I couldn't afford it anymore, and it was honestly one of the hardest transitions of my life. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't have access to laundry, so I ended up having to go to my friend's door from Brooklyn all the way to the bottom of my transition to wash my clothes for weeks. And this impacted my efforts to find school. I was in a period of stagnation where I didn't feel like
that's the feedback.
Yeah, that is. Voice lift shouldn't be on.
I couldn't,
Oh, okay, I didn't, okay.
offer meals. I actually made this blog post called "How many times can you cook pasta until you realize you're broke?" Me and my partner cooked pasta for months. We have tried Alfredo sauce, we have tried vodka sauce, we have tried spaghetti sauce, and I even would buy like little white of bread so that I could like. Instead. And thankfully, I have the support of my family and my partner to kind of guide me towards finding healing the immune system, which has helped me immensely. But if the student isn't able to have that support system, then they will fall through the cracks. If they aren't able to have the mental health resources needed, they will fall through the cracks. I did. I really did. And which is why it's very important that students have these resources so that they know that they are supported not only for their academic performance, but just their person, just for being a human. Yeah, that's the excerpt I wrote about not being able to do laundry or being able to eat really anything, and realizing that this is a problem. I don't think my family knows how that is done. So here are some mental health resources that are available to PhD students. There's a crisis text line that community students text anonymously, just talking about day-to-day lives or something big really happened and they can mention it in that text chat. There's also campus counseling that is available to every student, which is something I also partake in. I love it. I think it should be advertised a lot more to community students though, because I have met people who didn't know that there was a counseling center where you could find a specific therapist that matched your needs. And there's also Together All, which is an anonymous online peer community support system where students can just post about how they're feeling and not have to worry about how to be understood. The 10-Minute Mind is actually one of the things. It's a mindfulness meditation app. It just kind of helps you take some deep breaths and gives you techniques to learn how to emotionally regulate yourself. And then Cognito is for staff. They go there for resources to figure out how to talk to students about their mental health if they're noticing certain things, which I think is also very important because sometimes you might notice it, but you might not know how to address it. The eCheckup to Go is specifically for substance use, which is, like I said, very normalized in higher education. So this is very, very important. It involves nicotine, alcohol, marijuana, all of that, which is usually based upon in higher education. So the fact that there's a program specifically surrounded around that is very, very important. mental health resources that are available to everyone, not just students. In New York State, there is the New York State Office of Mental Health. They have this website where they have different free PDF forms of ways to emotionally regulate, ways to talk to a family member who you know is having mental health issues. And there's a lot of free resources on that website of just what you can do when you're in that room, which I think is very important because a lot of people who live in mental health stuff, they not have the ability to go out and see it. And so to have it on the website is beautiful. And there's also, sorry, see, there's also the national. Okay, this is an organization that was founded in 1979, and it's actually family-based. It's for families to help their family unit with mental health, which is a very big thing because everything that we learn as individuals come from our family. So everything, every aspect, every perspective we have in the world starts with our family unit. And a lot of people aren't able to heal themselves mentally because their family isn't on that same wavelength. And then so New York City resources, there's 2 different helplines. There's 988 and NYC Well. The only difference between these 2 is that 988 only offers languages in English and Spanish, I believe, but NYC Well has translators. And I think that's really cool. They have translators so that anyone from anywhere, from any language is able to seek help that they need and have someone to talk to. So we do know about just like talk therapy and everything, but what's another form of mental health support that can be beneficial to students? I actually started Tiana's dance expression at BMCC. It's where I incorporate CBT and DBT into my dance classes. This looks like, actually, for instance, the inner child workshop I just had this week. I had everyone draw themselves as a child, as whatever they wanted to be when they grow up, and I had them write 2 things that they loved about their inner child, and 1 thing that their inner child was proud of them for accomplishing. We all went around, shared our things, and we were able to dance to When I Grow Up, and we played dress up. And throughout that time, I was able to connect to people on a deeper, like, spiritual, emotional level, and I got to see these people as humans, and everyone's conscious. And so this is definitely the beginning. This is just the beginning. In order to solve a macro level problem, I gotta start micro. Okay, so now we have to go down to the core, which is we must invest in campus mental health counseling. And Assembly Bill number A04142 was sponsored by Sarah True-Grant Forrest, and this act shall take into effect the 4th of July of 2023, and next succeeding it shall become law. This Assembly Bill is important because it will mean that there's more investment in mental health services in CUNY and SUNY, but it also guarantees that there's 1 counselor for every 1,000 students. And it prioritizes more BIPOC counselors to reflect CUNY's diversities and offer more culturally informing care. This bill is important because having more investments means that we have more workshops that the one Tiana had, and that these workshops are actually efficient. And having a counselor that actually relates to you, relates to your experience, means that you can open yourself up to it. I know a lot of students don't really feel comfortable talking to a counselor who they feel has never experienced anything or any way of life that relates to their own. So how do they understand what you're going through? So it's really important that we diversify our counselors and that they look more like the students that they're serving, and increasing the funding and also increasing the counselor ratio is really important, because if we have this large amount of students depending on these very small amount of counselors in our campuses, then it will mean that there's very long wait times for appointments, so it won't be effective at all. But this is not enough.
I am in the Macaulay Honors College. It's a subdivision of the CUNY system. And our ratio is actually much better than what's proposed, which is 1 to 1,000, but we have like about 1 to 300. We still experience very long wait times. And we also have limits to the amount of sessions that we can hold. So once you reach 15 counseling sessions, it's over. So space it out basically and make sure that you don't struggle mentally after those sessions. So if every student takes those 15 sessions in one semester, it means that for the rest of their college career, they have no one to talk to, or they have to go outside and seek mental counseling, which is extremely expensive, and a lot of students don't have health insurance. So although these bills are really great and they're like helping out with the ratio and making it better in a sense, there needs to be more funding and there needs to be bills that address issues like the 15 limit, which is crazy, honestly. But I'm gonna move this on to Rachel and she's gonna call us.
Thank you so much. So with everything we said today and discussed, there's another call to action that we want to proclaim. In the Scan Me form, there's a form that's gonna let you address your representatives and elected officials, where we have a tailored Google Doc for you where you can email the prompt to your elected officials and ask for them to call to action with these bills and help us with basic needs for college students. The link is in the chat as well.
All right, so a brief overview so you all know what to expect for today. We're gonna meet the team briefly after this. We're gonna go through an icebreaker. We're gonna talk about some new changes in the CUNY system as well as changes in the FAFSA and TAP application. We're gonna end off with a project that we did about work-based learning and then end off with some advocacy tips and Q&A session. Okay, so meet the team. I'm Josh Morrison, politics and education major at Teachers College, and I'm really happy to be here. I'll pass that to Jackie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jacqueline Ordonez, and I'm a sophomore at New York University, majoring in international relations with a minor in public policy.
Hi everyone, my name is Priscilla. I'm a student at Adelphi University studying nursing, minoring in African Black Caribbean Studies, and I'll be leading policy lead. I will pass it on to Claudia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Claudia. I go to the College of Staten Island, where I'm a sophomore studying English literature with a minor in dance, and I served as the communications lead for this project.
Higher education experience that all of us hopes to achieve. And this should take only a few minutes, and I'll be checking to see if there's any technical issues. Oh, it's not working? Okay, let me check. Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, it should be working now. Good. Put 3, just 10.
Okay, everyone, thank you for taking the time to answer our icebreaker. So currently we're not able to show it, but I can hold it up on my laptop. So this is everyone's responses collected, and as you can see, the three major themes that everybody agrees on in this room is that college and the ideal higher education experience should be one that's free, empowering, and equitable for everyone. And I feel like all of our presentations coincides with those themes and ensuring that students in New York State have access to a free and equitable higher educational experience. And I'll now be passing it on to Josh.
Again, so just a brief overview of what we'll be presenting today. A lot of it mirrored what Senator Bernardes said earlier, but we really just want to address some of the inequities happening in higher education, especially as they relate to New York City students and New York State students. And, hopefully you all will be empowered to join the advocacy and, help end the inequities. So now Priscilla is going to talk about the New Deal in CUNY and some upcoming changes.
Okay, thank you. So before we start work, I'm gonna give a quick introduction to the CUNY system and assets. So for those that don't know, CUNY stands for the City University of New York, which is a public university system in New York, which has 25 campuses across the 5 boroughs. Also, they offer a wide range of undergrad, graduate, and also even continuing education opportunities to students of all ages and background. And also, they provide accessible and affordable higher education. Can you guys not hear me? Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. They want me to project. I'm sorry. Okay, so now we're going to get into the CUNY system issues and challenges. So the first one is faculty shortages, which is that many universities, including mostly the CUNY system, have faced challenges in recruiting and retaining their qualified professors or faculties. And this has impacted the quality of education because with the Can you guys hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting different messages. All right. So basically with the faculties shortages is the issue whereby some professors or faculties ends up having a different ratio whereby there's more students in comparison to teachers, which is really bad. And also the IJAC faculty condition, which is that those who are hired as part-time basis sometimes face job insecurities. They have limited benefits, and they end up having low pay compared to their full-time counterparts. And this has, affected a lot of, the part-time workers because they feel like they're not able to give it their best when it comes to the quality of education that they can provide for their students, because they feel like they have a limited sources in the sense of what is the type of support they can give to the student. Next slide, please. Okay. The next one being administrative challenges, which is that, sometimes, when it comes to the administration staff, they play a major crucial part, especially when it comes to the academic institution. And some of the concerns related to this issue was that the staffing includes issues of the inadequate support for faculties, insignificant resources and challenges, which it's not helping them manage the administrative workload, meaning that they don't get the amount of hands-on type of experiences to get the support, because it's like you have a shortage of the support that you need to be able to run, especially the academic institution. Next slide, please. So now let's get into improving staffing concerns. So some of these points were investing in recruitment. So what does this basically mean? It means that actively seeking faculties who are qualified and providing competitive compensation packages that can help attract and retain top talent. Also getting support for adjunct faculties, ensuring that they also get the fair compensation, benefits, and professional development opportunities for the adjunct, for them to be able to contribute to the, the benefit of the students and for the school. And also the effectiveness administrative processes, which is basically, providing the resources and also investing in the professional development, which can help in the impact of the hands, the overall effectiveness to make the flow of everything goes. Good. Next slide, please. So now let's get into what is the New Deal. So the New Deal is a bill that has been introduced to restore a once free CUNY system, who is for low income students of NYC, New York City. And the goal is to address systemic issues facing low income students. With more faculty and resources, students can achieve their best potential. Next slide. Okay, so now let's actually go more in depth. So the New Deal for CUNY is more into the aim to address these staffing concerns, improving the overall quality of education within the CUNY system. So some of these points are the increased funding, which is, funds to the CUNY to support the salaries of the faculties, also improving the facilities for the school, and also getting more resources available for the school. Also faculty development programs, which is basically professional development that include workshops, conferences, and research opportunities, which basically helps spotlight a lot of other students, can also help a lot of students get the sense of what are some of the opportunities available. And also the enhanced support for adjunct, which is basically the improve the working condition and compensation, recognizing, their value contribution to the institution. Next slide. Lastly, the strategic administrative planning, which is basically staffing to ensure that the institution has the necessary support structures in place for faculty effective teaching and learning for their students, and also a collaboration with stakeholders, which is helping the faculty, the student, and other stakeholders to identify and address specific staffing concerns, which help with when it comes to the fostering collaborative and inclusive approach. I will pass it on to Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. So hi, everybody. I'll be starting off talking about the FAFSA completion for all. So the Senate Bill S1983A uplifts and encourages that college enrollment by requiring FAFSA completion for all New York State high school students. So New York should require high school seniors to complete either a FAFSA application or the DREAM application for students. So in summary, the FAFSA completion for all says that all students should apply for and complete the FAFSA form, even if they don't think that they're eligible. High school seniors should be required to complete the FAFSA form or opt out with a signed waiver. And guidance counselors, as well as homeless liaisons in the K-12 system, should connect with and help homeless students with the completion of the FAFSA form. So here we have a take action form. So if all of you don't mind, if you could please scan the QR code and fill out our take action form, we would greatly appreciate that. I'll leave it on for a couple of seconds. Okay. So the redesigned FAFSA application, this has been huge news to all students that complete the FAFSA form, including myself. So this will be starting for the 2024 to 2025 cycle. And what does this mean? So this basically means that the simplification of the FAFSA form aims to expand eligibility for financial aid, and it will require students to complete fewer questions in order to simplify the questioning process of the form, and it imposes less stress as well as less complications for students filling out the form. So myself personally, I am thrilled to hear that there will be fewer questions, because that was a part that I really did not look forward to personally, and my parents also did not look forward to personally, because it was always a little bit confusing and it never seemed to get easier. So I will be filling out this new form, and I am very curious to see how it's going to go. I'm very excited. So I wanted to share this other resource. All of you could scan the QR code if you'd like, and you could learn more about the new FAFSA form, and for the students, what it may mean for you. I'll leave it on for a couple of seconds. So shifting to TAP awards for dual enrollment. So Senate Bill S 5616 introduces tuition assistance programs for dual enrollment. And for those who don't know what dual enrollment is basically dual enrollment courses allow students to receive college credit while in high school. And what does this bill exactly mean? So dual enrollment students should receive TAP and tuition assistance on their dual enrollment coursework. It provides and promotes financial support for dual enrollment students, and dual enrollment programs need to be advertised more among school advisors as well as administration for students to be aware of the opportunities. So this is another situation I could also attest to myself. When I was in high school, I believe I learned about dual enrollment when I was a senior, and at that time it was a little bit too late to really get involved. So I strongly urge for there to be more advertising for dual enrollment, not only for the financial support aspect, but also for the programs itself, because many students are not aware of this and they're not really taking advantage of this amazing opportunity to gain college credit while in high school. So these are just some TAP bills that I would love to uplift. So the first one increases the income eligibility threshold for TAP. The second one increases the minimum TAP award and parental income amounts. The third one, which is awaiting reintroduction, covers additional semesters. So it would be able to cover up to 6 years. And the TAP right now covers up to 4. So 6 would be a huge change. And the last one increases TAP for students experiencing homelessness. And in general, there should be an expand for eligibility for the TAP for the graduate level, because graduate students could also really benefit from this. And here I have another take action form that I would love everybody to sign up for. So it's for TAP awards for dual enrollment coursework, and scan the QR code. I'll leave it on for a couple of seconds. And with that being said, I will go ahead and pass it over to Jackie.
Thank you, Claudia, and thank you everyone for that. Thank you for providing us those action resources. And now we have these key testimonials that we wanted to highlight from our YI Young Advocates cohort. And it basically discusses and talks about their experiences when applying for and filling out FAFSA or TAP. And so I'm going to pass it on to Claudia so she can tell us about her experience.
Thank you, Jackie. Hi again. So what I said for this question was that filling out the FAFSA form has always been a confusing and stressful process each year for me and my parents. I'm glad that with the redesigned FAFSA form, there will likely be less questions, which removes a big part of the stress that comes with filling out the form. So connecting back to what I said previously, I am very excited and I'm looking forward to answering less questions. And I strongly believe that the simplification was needed. I'll go ahead and pass it on to Priscilla.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. So for me, I also said that initially when I was applying for FAFSA and TAP, I didn't see the point in it because as you know, as a student, I felt like I was not going to get the support that I needed. So what basically I did is I came to the realization that even though there's a gap between the amount of support or money I could get, I was opening to still filling it out to see what are the opportunities still available for me, even if, you know, the income of the support I get from the government is based upon my father's income. I was still willing to still put in the work to still get the support that I needed. I'll pass it back on to Jackie. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Priscilla. Yeah, I feel like especially for me and like many students, filling out FAFSA is always stressful. Just whenever like you hear that the deadline is coming up, you already have to remind yourself and tell your parents that they need to give you their W-4 forms and all of that. And I feel like for me, similar to Priscilla, it just kind of reminds me that like a large amount of the financial aid that I'm going to get is not enough to meet my financial needs or like to address like my tuition costs. And that's because a large portion of it is determined by your parents' income or assets, which doesn't like unnecessarily like address or meet your financial needs for college. And yeah, I'm gonna pass it on to Josh.
So we all pretty much agree that the FAFSA, from anyone in here, raise your hand if you have filled out the FAFSA. Okay, keep your hand up if it ever made you anxious. Filling it out. Right. So yeah, I felt that same way all the time. I remember going into high school for my bachelor, or going out of high school for my bachelor's. I remember my mom had only did it one time before, so a lot of it was on me to figure it out and, you know, make it work for myself. So hopefully with this new form, this is just one step to, you know, making the overall process easier for students to get to college. Okay, now Jackie's going to discuss work-based learning and, you know, how that affects college.
Yeah, so earlier on in the month, we actually had the opportunity to present in front of the Work-Based Learning Coalition that was hosted by Expanded. Shout out to Expanded. I don't know if they're here or online. They're here. Yeah, thank you for giving us that opportunity. And it just really just kind of showed us and reinforced that work-based learning is important and it should be implemented across our New York State high school experience. So for those of you that don't know what work-based learning is basically an opportunity to gain real-world work experience through an educational approach. So basically, we've seen work-based learning applied in other few schools across New York City when they intertwine the ability to pursue an internship or a fellowship or a job shadowing experience, and they're able to receive credit for that amounts to the amount of credits that they need to graduate. And so through that experience, students have this real world application. They're able to develop these skills while also preparing them for the workforce and the job market. And next slide. And so to really emphasize the importance that work-based learning has and holds, we use two main modes of research.
One being a survey that we made and we distributed across our networks with different students, colleagues, and schools alike. We also had a focus group that we conducted within our YI general session, kind of like talking about these experiences that people have had with work-based learning, and whether, you know, they would have benefited if they didn't have that. And so we found that overwhelmingly a large portion of the respondents and people agree and believe that work-based learning is important and that it should be implemented within the educational experience that New Yorkers have in high schools, public high schools specifically, and for the following reasons. One being that it provides career exposure, knowing that, oh wait, can everyone hear me? I've seen like on the Zoom, I'm seeing like the chat, okay. Yeah, it provides career exposure. You know, there's students that have an interest, whether that's in economics, film, dance, you know, there's different ways that we can connect those students to those experiences. Two being that it provides post-secondary awareness. We recognize that after high school, college isn't an option for everyone. So connecting those students with trade school or certification programs is also essential. And also it combines learning and practice. So you do learn these skills within a classroom setting, but then you're able to apply it beyond, which I think is much more beneficial because now you have the ability to address these real world situations. And also that it provides training for the workforce. You have these skills that are developed, and these are the benefits that a lot of respondents resonated with. Next slide. And we also noticed that although there are benefits associated to work-based learning, there are also a lot of challenges, mostly being that a lot of students aren't able to have access to work-based learning. And these are the key issues that kind of affect the widespread availability of work-based learning opportunities. One being that there's limited accessibility and visibility. So again, not a lot of students know that their schools are providing them with these resources, or teachers, counselors, academic advisors aren't redirecting these students to these opportunities. So in that way, a lot of students do miss out. And two being that there's a lack of rampant workforce development opportunities. We realize and we acknowledge and we know that students should have the ability to be exposed to a particular career or industry to start building onto that future at an early start. And then through the graph that we see on the slideshow, we're able to see that 44.4%, that's the sample size that we were able to gather in the survey, agree that their high school doesn't advertise or well publicize or make it known that they do have these work-based learning experiences, and that kind of reinforces the limited accessibility and visibility component in that. And next slide. And these are key testimonials that we wanted to highlight, where students were able to talk about their work-based learning experiences. And we have Priscilla with us today who can tell us about her quote.
Okay, so when I was asked this question, I said that I believe it's important because, oh, sorry. I said because depending on where you go to school, you only know certain majors. So basically, coming from, you know, an African household, you usually hear of a few type of majors. You're either engineering, a lawyer, a doctor, or a nurse. And, you know, going to school, I realized that I'm not the only type of person that's in that type of bubble, that you usually are stuck in that type of bubble of, oh, this is the only opportunities available. But, you know, recently finding out that work-based learning gives students opportunities to be able to explore, get more knowledge of other fields that are available. Because, you know, if you're not able to be a nurse, a doctor, or the regular stuff, you will be able to go into other spaces within that field. And it's like an eye opener, which can help, you know, in the process of closing the gap of being stuck in the bubble. by being, helping students like myself being able to know that, yes, you want to be in this field, but there's also other opportunities available. I'll pass it on back to Jackie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priscilla, for sharing that with us. We also have Max, who is with us today, but I can just read his quote. And he basically said, yeah, because students should be able to know what opportunities they have. You don't know what you don't know. In high school, I really wasn't thinking about a career, and it doesn't start until it didn't start until through my freshman year of college. It underprepared me because if I could see what was out there prior to college, I think I could have started building toward it a lot sooner. And so this kind of just shows that a lot of students, when they're exposed to these different career options and opportunities, it just allows them to kind of like know what they want to do, which I think is really important because a lot of students don't know. And sometimes that's fine, but also having these experiences, it allows you to at least develop these skills so that you can implement in other areas in your life. And next slide. And I will now be passing it on to Josh.
So, in light of like talking about college access, I think it's important to highlight this, the Fair College Admissions Act. Just again to reiterate, the Fair College Admission Act seeks to eliminate the use of legacy admissions in the college process. So about, I think the statistic was the 250 top universities in the country, about 56% of them use legacy in their admissions process. So I think if you probably took that out, a lot of college campuses will look a lot more diverse, a lot different, and reach out and extend to non-traditional students. Again, the Senate bill is up there. I'm not going to embarrass myself and try to read it. And yeah, I just wanted to highlight that. Okay. So this is gonna be like a very abrupt pivot, but
Yeah.
I think
So you're gonna ignore the fact that,
yeah, I think it's an abrupt pivot, but I think the People's Plan, their objective right now is super important as New York City residents, as people involved in advocacy. The People's Plan, their proposed plan, is actually to give local New York City residents control of the New York City budget. So there's like New York City or New York State, if we want to take it that far, is home to the most billionaires in the world. We have like one of the largest budgets across the country. And I think it's super important that its citizens have a role in where that money is going. And you know why? I think it is to empower grassroots organizations to prioritize issues they think are important to their communities and have the financial resources to support them. So next slide. Why is this important right now? Right. So I think it was recently announced yesterday. This is a recent one from last night. Eric Adams is cutting about 5% across the board in a lot of areas. One of them is the compost program, which I actually love a lot. That will be cut. There's a closure of school libraries, funding not going to CUNYs, and a lot of education and social services that communities do need. So I'd say the People's Plan is, a radical review of this. They want to actually change the current service delivery of how things are changed in community, how change is impacted, and reprioritize the things they think are important. The only way they can really do that is having financial resources behind them to back their initiatives. Yeah. And we can go to the next. So a part of their education platform, the first one is decriminalize schools. I'll give you a quick, I just thought of it. I visited my high school the other day. There was never metal detectors, and now about 300 students go through metal detectors every day. Maybe that's common for some people, but I don't necessarily know if students should be in this state of being policed in a sense. So their top priority is to decriminalize schools and end those historical things that railroad certain people to incarceration. The second one, I can't really see it. Oh my God. Oh yeah, right. Support. I knew that. So support social and mental health resources. That's important because schools are not just places where you learn. those are places where you're getting a civic education, you're being tolerant of people, you're understanding everyone from different walks of life, so you can enter the world with those skills. When there's cuts to those services, students are just underprepared to deal with life, and that's important. And the third one, right, invest in implementing culturally responsive teaching. This summer, we've seen a lot of censorship happening in education, especially in states like Florida. And I think in order for students to do well, they need to read content that is relevant to their lives and their context. And last but not least, yes, keep schools public. So there's a huge debate. I go to an education school. A lot of people have this debate about public and private schools, voucher systems, all the charter schools. But I think it's important that from the history, when you look at the history of education in our country, it's always been as the great equalizer or that sort of thing. This was students' way to uplift themselves. We just expand how much people can uplift themselves if schools are public and schools are actually properly resourced to do that. So I just want to uplift that. And the QR link will take you directly to like an email fill out directly to Eric Adams talking about these budget cuts. I think it's really cool. It's really simple. The actual organization is about 1,000 emails away from their set mark. So any email helps in that regard. And you know, take a moment if this is something that interests you. You want to raise concerns about these budget cuts. You know, by all means, take a gander. Okay, it looks like we all like the budget cuts. All right, we can go to the next one. Thanks. Right, so Jackie put this together for you all as well. I saw one of the flyers on the table actually highlighted these events. I'm not gonna go through them all, but if you want to take a look, here are different ways you can join in on the People's Plan and talk about these budget cuts. I think the December 11th one is a rally at City Hall. I think I'll also be there too. Hopefully I can see some of your faces there, and you know, let's raise concerns about these budget cuts. That's gonna affect all of us. And a lot of jobs will also be lost. So let's you know, get as much people there as possible. Okay. And with that, you know, we worked really hard on this, so thank you all for listening. Got your copies. Yeah, any questions?
Oh, sorry. My phone or just. But thank you. So I need a clarification on something because we were all misled by the mayor. The mayor saying that it's cutting the library hours, right, on Sundays. I want to make sure I'm correct on that. But according to your presentation, it also seems that CUNY libraries are being cut. And I have a serious problem with that, especially with finals coming up. And, you know, as it is, the hours of Brew College now, they cut it by 2 hours. You know, it used to be open till midnight. So that's a major issue. Because, you know, once you start, you know, you don't have many students work, jobs. And so they can't, you know, their hours vary when they use the library. So that's an issue that I think, you know, that we all agree on.
Yeah, I like mirror that too. I'm one of those people, especially since undergrad. I go to the library at like 7 or 8 to like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. And if the library's not there, I'm probably not gonna do that. Just being honest, I can't. So like having, you know, closures of libraries, students not having access to it, you know, how effective can they really be? It needs to be in a productive environment. So I agree. I think it's really important. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I also agree with that because as you said, like with finals like approaching, like students right now, they like live, breathe, and go to the libraries every single day. I know like for me, I'm always there because that's really the place where I'm able to like concentrate, like away from like the outside noise, like in your dorm room or in the city. And so just with these like hours being cut, it just makes it so difficult to have that like place and setting where you have like librarians if you need assistance or like those books and those educational resources. So I think that's something that is like so important, especially because like
libraries should be centers where you're like able to be there and learn and grow. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Is there another question?
Just to echo that. I can't hear you.
I'll just speak up. So, in City College, right? Like just to echo what you guys were saying, the library used to be open until 12, they now close at 9 p.m.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Yeah, oh.
First of all, great job. I consider this to be a room of pretty like-minded folks. So sometimes when these presentations happen, I'm wondering, what does it look like for you all as student advocates to have these conversations with others?
Good.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a really interesting like question to ask. I feel like especially because a lot of students share like similar shared experiences. And so just being able to talk to like your peers, it just makes, it validates your experience and makes you know that you're not alone. And I feel like we see that specifically with FAFSA. Like I have some friends and I know some like people that like before filling out FAFSA was so hard because they had to like for individuals that come from single parent households, individuals that come from single parent households, like being able to get the taxes or like the income forms for like their other parent that's not like financially like responsible or like in their lives was hard. But now with these changes to FAFSA, it makes it so that you don't have to like, you know, go through a bunch of obstacles to get that information. Now I'm pretty sure you're only relying on the parent that is financially responsible for you. And so I feel like that's so helpful for a lot of students that, you know, had that shared experience and they didn't really know how to go about that. So I feel like that is something that, you know, is something that really helps students. And I'm gonna pass it on to Josh if he has anything else.
I think that's like a great question, and I will say I think in some pockets of the world and some universities, this conversation is not being had. So at my university, for one, like I'm not sure anyone is at least actively organizing behind these things. We may talk about it in class, we may address it, but no one's taken the steps like some of the young advocates are today. But I will say, for me, when I'm in those spaces with my peers, I'm always like trying to uplift projects that I'm necessarily interested in, as they will like help the entire fight in the next. So one thing I'm working on now is like putting together like a program for, I used to teach middle school, so I'm coming up with a program now, so by the time those middle schoolers go into high school, they have an idea of where they're going for their life in college and beyond. So I agree, more conversations do need to be had, but if not you, then who? So gotta start something.
Afternoon, our group is about healthcare. So in this presentation, we'll be discussing insurance issues, mental health, and doctors. So my name is Ruth. I go by she, her pronouns. I go to the University at Albany. I'm a senior studying psychology, double minoring in women, gender studies, and sociology. I was the campaign manager for this project.
My name is Jessica Hong. I'm a junior at St. Francis College studying psychology. And I was the training and consumer and lead for this project.
My name is Max Garcia. I'm a political science major at the City College of New York. A minor in Black Studies and Theater, and I was the comms lead for this project.
Hello, my name is Maya. I go by both she, her, and they, them pronouns. I am the engagement lead, and I study at HWS Anthropology and Philosophy. And there's also Tristan, who is our policy lead, but he could not make it to the meeting today. Okay, so for the overview of today's topic, we're going to be discussing issues in healthcare for adults, college students, and people with disabilities. We're also going to discuss comments and interviews from people who have had jarring experiences with the healthcare system. And then finally, ways to fix the healthcare system and policies and research regarding healthcare.
That one real quick icebreaker. You gonna get into the play, go back. There you go. You gonna play Jeopardy real quick. I just remember that that's right. Everybody on this side, y'all seen one. Everybody on that side, y'all seen two. Everybody on Zoom, I love y'all, but you're gonna be a studio audience for today. So we could just play into the Jeopardy game real quick.
I can't see the chat, so Max, can you tell me which one I should click on?
Oh, all right, that's. The sun will go close, but we will be right back with those Jeopardy.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm not speaking at home. I'm trying to get this to be into this next to your phone. So, so it is August time. I will send it into. There we go. All right, so team one, I'm gonna pick you because you're right next to me. What are we thinking? Oh my God. That's healthcare access and insurance.
100?
Insurance 100? Oh, for 200. How does race factor in slice level access? Kind of a broad question, but one thing.
Hey.
So I would say that a way that race factors into for health access, I feel like is certain racial groups are kind of turned away from it. They're kind of shamed away from it and told that they aren't really needed it or needing it or taken seriously if they are going out to get those resources. I also feel like a lot of the issues that people experience because of their race in this society contributes to mental health, and it contributes to your anxiety and contributes to your depression, and it factors into a lot of things relating to our mental health, so society and our race.
Is that your final response, Bill?
Not the cultural responsive therapists and those that work and can identify like us makes it even more challenging.
Yeah, so I was gonna make a suggestion, like a eco map. We don't do an eco map, when I went to college, they never did an eco map on us to plan and prepare. And I think that's what every counselor should be doing, especially in high school and when you enter college as a freshman, to see what services you need, where you're at, whether you have a learning disability, and that sort of thing.
Now we see the answer, because we have 5 answers that sounded correct. Mental health care access is even less available in the African American community, with only 25% of African Americans having access to mental health care compared to 40% of white Americans. Yo, give a team 1 day points, bro.
We didn't do teams, I'm sorry, but like I couldn't do the teams on this one. But you guys got the point.
Let's get no more questions. All right, team 2. What y'all want? Insurance is 200. What is a copay? Raise his hand immediately. I don't know. So I don't know if people want to remember that, but no, we definitely correct. So that's correct.
Should I reveal or no?
Yeah, please roll that. Okay, yo, that's not talking about, right? So, since we don't have time in this game, we are tied. Everybody.
Are we playing another round or no?
Hold on, so decision.
Wait, does anyone want to play another round or no?
Oh no, this is going great. That's everybody wondering the side.
Okay.
So boom. Start off by talking about mental health. Okay? Mental health is defined as a person's condition related to their emotional and physical psychological well-being. I want to start off by acknowledging that mental health struggles are just as critical as physical illness. I know that might not be a popular opinion always. Myself, I've dealt with the stigma of having mental health struggles, and especially in my community, is not always embraced. So again, I just want to start off by saying that mental health struggles are just as real as physical illness. Many people in this country struggle with mental health on a daily basis, and they require professional help to their life. So it's mental health care access. 1 in 5 Americans live with some sort of mental illness. So an estimated 57.8 million adults, right? I want to say there's about 30 people in here. It's a good number on it. With that quick math, somebody, I mean 6 people in here statistically would have a mental health struggle. So again, just to put that in perspective, I see some head shakes, so I think there's a lot more. There's a lot. Got it. Of those 57.8 million, only 47% were able to receive treatment for their mental health issues. So again, less than half the people with mental health struggles ever receive help, which is crazy. Income race and culture play a big role in whether or not you're able to get access to mental health services, as we saw in the Jeopardy game. That's the answer on the last Jeopardy game. Only 25% of African Americans receive mental health care last year compared to 40% of African Americans. Now, so just read off the stats we have right here. 2/3 of the people in the United States with a diagnosable mental illness never seek treatment. So now it's one of those things where 66% of people who've been diagnosed never go to the hospital to get treatment, which then is wild, because imagine saying 66% of diabetics never go for a checkup. Like, you want to put it in that perspective. All right, stop this. And just talking about the racial disparities in mental health care once again. Now we're talking about children specifically. 31% of white children with mental health problems receive mental health services, opposed to 13% of children from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, mental health problems ever receive mental health services. So again, now we see a nearly 20% difference in the amount of children who receive just based on race. I would see racial disparities in mental health treatment. 51% of white healthcare providers in mental health believe that their patients do not adhere to the medical treatments as a result of cultural or linguistic barriers. Basically, what that means is, in layman's terms, more than half of white therapists believe that people of other cultures or races don't, how you say, follow what they're supposed to do because of barriers. So again, that's kind of like victim blaming somebody that has an ailment just because you don't feel like they understand you due to a linguistic or cultural barrier. 56% report on having no form of cultural competency training. That is a big one. Me personally, okay, story time right here. So me personally, the one time I've been to a therapist in the United States, it was at my school, it was a white therapist. This person asked me, like straight up, if I had like, and I quote, had I had Haitian friends, because maybe a Haitian person put a curse on me, and that's why I was having mental health struggles. I walked out because I'm half Haitian. I was like, so I'm like, had you been culturally competent and had some sort of training, you probably would have made that remark. But again, I'm just saying this does happen. This was someone on the college campus that was there to help students. Wow. Continuing on, again, racial disparities, just to finish off on the racial disparities in mental health treatment. 8.7% of Black adults receive help for their mental health concerns, as opposed to 16% of white adults who receive help for their mental health concerns. That's more than double the amount just based on this. We'll go to the next slide. And these are interview responses. We all interviewed people, our college campuses, trying to find out like how they believe that culture impacts mental health care. So I'm just gonna read mine really quick. I interviewed this person who said that in this culture, it is frowned upon to go to therapists. Even though nowadays there's more educated individuals in his family, they said that he should go to therapists. But like the older generation, they said that they don't really believe in mental health. Like he said that he had a cousin that was hospitalized and his aunt didn't want him to get his medication because she didn't believe it was a problem. So now he said that's like culturally he's Caribbean. He said American wise that he believes is more recognized, but there's little to be done outside of mental health to help people's mental health. Outside of mental health, people don't really do much to change the world, and mental health is what he said. Maya, would you like to read your interview real quick?
Yeah, sure. I can just summarize it real quick. I interviewed two of my friends from college, Nicole and John, and they both talked about the same thing about like how culture impacts mental health care, and they also were both like in consensus that mental health care is like definitely like a huge stigma, and that like a science/Western medicine, like for example, doesn't see that like mental health is equal to physical health, and also just even though like their families might have had history of mental illness, they still don't like to talk about it, and it's like a taboo and like a hush topic.
Quick before we move on to the next slide, I just want to say all of the barriers that exist for people to get mental health care access is huge. Because not only is it just extremely expensive, a lot of people don't have it covered under their insurance. Me, myself, my parents, I just got insurance by the way. I want to shout out YI real quick because I was my got insurance. I had a workshop on insurance earlier in the program. So there's one quick shout out to y'all. But then as soon as I looked at it, wasn't covered, mental health wasn't covered. So I was like, if I break my arm, I'm good. So basically, right, then mental health care, not accessible, is extremely expensive. Now, if you have the money to get there, now you have your culture who's like pushing back against you. Me personally, myself, I have people say, oh, mental health struggles, that's not real, that's white people problems, that's this, that's that. And people be saying all types of stuff like that. So it's like, I feel like culturally, there's a lot of work to be done as highlighted by the interview responses. Next slide. That's good. That's original.
So I interviewed a friend named Kiara, and Kiara brought light to the various biases that exist in the medical field at large. She explained that the biases in the mental health field are even worse, and there is a necessity to educate people, but that's gonna take a lot, and basically, the only way to truly bring change is to, provide more culturally responsive care through diverse therapists.
So, policies on mental health care. So policies we found through why the COVID-19 pandemic significantly increased the demand for mental health services, especially among college students. We know that the isolation people felt during the pandemic and all of the insecurities and all of the just the trauma, the mass trauma, the collective trauma that we faced during the COVID-19 pandemic. We saw uptick in mental health struggles, uptick in depression, anxiety, etc. So state lawmakers, we believe, must increase investment in mental health counseling, especially on public college campuses, guaranteeing at least one counselor per every 1,000 students, which again seems the bare minimum, but it's, I forget the exact number from my college, I think it was one for every 1,300, so it's not, yeah, it's still not at this mark, and this is to ensure that college students are getting efficient healthcare needs met. Because me personally, again, at City College, whenever you go to try to make an appointment with the counseling center, usually have to wait months to see somebody. So it's like, then you have to break down in August, you can squeeze in November. Like, hope you good 3 months later. Now, public policies. Timothy's Law ensures that health insurance plans established in New York offer coverage for mental health and substance use disorder treatments that are on par with those with medical and surgical care. Due to Timothy committing suicide, and at times people don't view mental health issues as healthcare issues, this is to ensure that they do. The law was signed by Governor George E. Patrick in December of 2006, but took effect in January 1st, 2007. So this is like, again, this policy that was actually has been put in place. Next slide.
So the next issue that we're going to be talking about is problem medical diagnosis. So according to Society to Improve Diagnosis in Medicine, which was written in 2023, they have a statistic that diagnostic errors affect an estimated 12 million Americans and likely cause more harm to patients than all other medical errors combined. An estimated 40,000 to 80,000 people die each year from diagnostic failures in the US. Hospitals alone, and probably at least that many, suffer permanent disability. Late screening of health issues, like all the people like whose pictures are on the slide, like they were all victims of like late diagnosis and like not being diagnosed correctly. So like, for example, Chadwick Boseman, cause of death was colon cancer. He passed at the age of 43 and colon cancer screen it for ages 45 to 75. So like, because it wasn't the age, unfortunately, that's why it happened. And finally, being able to start screening for health issues earlier on in life will prevent death, adjusting one's way of life and benefit them in the long term. So proper medical diagnosis is inherently important to the topic of healthcare. Next slide. So there are some Padlets here that are related to the topic. For example, like one of the quotes is that, how come I pay $64 each paycheck for health insurance, but I had a family? Why would I pay $500? People should rather die than spend money on an ambulance. Why is it called urgent care when I have to wait 20 minutes, even when I have scheduled an appointment? So all of those quotes show that all of those aspects, like everything is interconnected, that there's many different issues to why a person might not be diagnosed at a like right time. They might not have the money to, they might not want to call an ambulance when they're not feeling good. So there's many aspects involved. Next slide. And there's also the interviews that we did. Jessica, if you want to read your quote.
So I interviewed a dear friend of mine, Gabriella, about the challenges that she faced getting diagnosed with a rare disease called oleodysplasty. And I'll summarize it by saying the disease affects one in 100,000, and her mother had to go to every single doctor that was in network to prove that they couldn't treat her. And still, when she found one out-of-network doctor that would treat her daughter, the insurance wouldn't cover it. So all I'll say to that is, what is insurance for when they can't even cover treatment for the one doctor that can treat an illness?
I interviewed my friend Kwan, who was talking about his journey of being re-diagnosed for ADHD, and he said that I had to get re-diagnosed for ADHD this past year, and it felt like there were so many unnecessary barriers and issues that were that exacerbated my ADHD. So like, it's not even the fact that like it's like physical disabilities that like might get worse from misdiagnosis or not being diagnosed at the right time. Mental health issues also get exacerbated, especially people who are neurodivergent. Like they might not get diagnosed for basically their whole life. And next slide. So we did some research on diagnosis in healthcare, and the first public policy that I want to talk about is Senate Bill S1196A. It has passed state assembly and Senate, but has not been delivered to Governor Hochul to sign yet. This bill requires health insurance policies and Medicaid to cover the cost of biomarker testing if there is proper medical evidence for its necessity. If you don't know what biomarker testing is, it can help to diagnose diabetes, osteoporosis, and cancer. And as you can see, all of those like diseases, and like some of them are like chronic, some of them are deadly. Like they, like if they don't get diagnosed at the right time, it genuinely might be deadly. So biomarker testing is extremely important, and like people, it needs to be more accessible to people. And the next is Senate Bill S5909, which has also passed state assembly and Senate, but has not been delivered to Governor Hochul yet to sign. This bill requires to prohibit application of fail first step therapy in order to access diagnosis and treatment of mental health conditions. And if you don't know what fail first therapy is, it is applied when an insurance company wants the patient to take their preferred drug before they are prescribed by the provider. So like this may also get in the way of getting diagnosed at the right time, or like if they're misdiagnosed, they're not given right medication at a right time. Next slide. And we have more quotes here. I'll just read one of them for the sake of time. I didn't realize how shitty private company insurance was in comparison to my previous government insurance. Every little thing I had to pay for, quite insane. Once again, like the fact that almost everything is interconnected. Like if you don't have access to good insurance, you most likely won't be able to get diagnosed at a time that you might need, which might be extremely like really bad, because it might exacerbate conditions that one might have. Ruth, over to you.
Okay, so my topic was medical debt. As we know, like medical debt isn't the only debt that we face in America, but medical debt is one of the highest ones that Americans have to deal with. So the reason behind why medical debt has been a major thing in the US is due to people actually not knowing the cost of certain procedures and things like that. So people usually don't know that an ambulance ride is $1,400, which was increased at 54% recently in over 3 years. It was originally $900. And this increase was due to the fact that major companies that do supply ambulances were saying that we have to transport people, the equipment we use is expensive, all sorts of things, but also is trying to devalue the life of people, and saying that in order to receive medical care, you have to pay for every little thing, which is just not the original reason why medical care was put into place. At times, some people will ask for an itemized bill because they want to know exactly what they're paying for. And once this word is brought up, usually the bill reduces. This is a direct scam for medical officials, especially when it comes to people going to give birth. Usually after birth, people get a bill which is extremely high, which can range from $10,000 to $100,000, depending on your status and the child's status. So by asking for itemized bill, you're asking the hospital to break down exactly what you're being billed for and why is that. And it has been known that people's bills do reduce drastically because hospitals tend to add more bills than they're willing to actually tell them. 68% of Americans don't pay their medical bills because they expect insurance to pay for it, and 44% feel as if they're being overcharged. 10% have borrowed money from family members to pay these bills and they're trying to repay them. That's why they're also in medical debt, probably not directly from the hospitals, but in a way are in debt. So it is said that New York had medical debt occurred to the urban institution, and nearly half of these people owe at least $500. Debt like this can affect credit scores and therefore make it more difficult to rent an apartment, get a mortgage, and more. So for some interviews for mine, here's a quote. I asked my friend that she had any medical debt. She said, I don't know if I would consider a medical debt. I owe Quest Diagnostic almost $800, but I wouldn't say I am in debt. I could pay for it, but I just refuse to, especially because I was never under the impression that I would be paying for blood tests. Maybe it is debt, maybe it isn't, but from what I gleaned, it doesn't affect me in any circumstance, so I will continue to be unaware and uncaring of it. Max, do you want to read yours?
Yeah. So I interviewed her from the call, and she said that the highest medical charge she'd ever received was $15,000. So she had to pay $15,000 out of pocket after the surgery. She had health insurance, but the insurance did not cover her at all. When she was speaking on Rose Simone, she had to wait to be attended by a doctor. She said that she waited 11 hours to get that surgery. So it's one of those things where she said she felt like her condition got worse due to the fact that she had to wait for that long, and then she still had to pay $15,000 afterwards. So when I asked her about the debt, she was like, yo, the American government won't have to come through with that because I don't have $15,000 to give it.
Yeah.
So while doing some research, a public policy that we found was Governor Kathy Hochul signed legislative S.6522A/A.7363A. It's actually called Protect Patients Facing Steep Medical Bills from Certain Penalties Against Their Wages or Property. This policy was amended so that the healthcare providers couldn't put a lien on homes, knowing that healthcare providers could put liens on people's homes just because they weren't able to pay their medical bills in a timely fashion is kind of ridiculous. You're taking away someone's home just because a bill that's $100,000 and they can't afford that. A direct quote from Assembly Member Richard Gottfried: people seeking care end up with bills to cover every increase out-of-pocket costs, including high deductibles, co-pays, and the various fees insurance policies don't cover. I also feel this coincides with the bill that Governor Hochul signed due to the fact that a lot of insurances don't really tell people, or they hide it in these policies, that they're not able to pay for every little thing that people do go to the doctor for. So after like a month of going to a doctor, you receive a mail saying you owe $500 because of a blood test or just even an eye exam. Those things need to be talked about and amended. This policy was known to us because of YI. It's called Ounce of Prevention Act. It's A6027/S1366. This policy is basically the hospital financial assistance application, which would help millions of low-income patients to pay their bills and support themselves, was a tedious process. Basically, 53,000 New Yorkers sued by nonprofit hospitals because of medical debt, and these patients were low income and people of color. This new bill will ensure that New York hospitals incorporate financial assistance application and policies to simplify the process for their patients applying. So overall, this act is just to ensure that hospitals are telling patients like, hey, this is an assisted program that can help you pay for your medical bill, and also taking away from the fact that hospitals can add interest into bills that you accumulate over the time. So I'll let Jessica read this quote.
So this quote is a transition into a bit of my personal experience, and I had a lot of experiences like with hard things in the healthcare system. So I thought for a long time about what I wanted to say. And it's a long quote, so I'll just say two things that I want you guys to take away from this quote. Number one is that access to healthcare means a lot more than treating my condition. It means ensuring that I can get to the doctor. It means ensuring that the doctor's office is accessible to me, and it means ensuring that the doctor knows how to treat my condition. I will also say that sometimes I feel like in the medical field we get so stuck up by jargon and science, and they forget that I have some very human needs and human circumstances behind my condition. So one of the things that I'm actually going through now is at the age of 21 is when a child typically transitions out of pediatric care. And for us, that is a critical time because lots of times when I start to go to adult doctors, they unfortunately do not know how to treat us as well as pediatric doctors. So my thing is just because the cutoff age according to the textbook or according to science might be 21. For example, do you really want me transitioning to a whole another team of doctors while I'm still in college and having so much to deal with? And I've been fortunate that that is not going to happen, but there needs to be more transparency across the board in order to help others have that same experience. And I believe the next slide, I'm talking about transportation. It's another one of those indirect barriers that I mentioned. So, as you can see from the slide here, it's a national issue. Over 1 million people every year struggles with transportation as the reason they don't seek healthcare or mental health care. And then, in terms of New York City, a 2023 Columbia University report that tracks like poverty and socioeconomic stats found that basically the three stats say if you're from economically disadvantaged background, you're much more likely to experience transportation difficulties than those that might be economically more fortunate. And I just have some solutions on the bottom, and they're basically, to sum those up, they're to use what we have and to create targeted programs for economically and vulnerable populations. So not only enhancing our public transportation, but maybe providing like subsidies for low income families, and you know, in let's say Black and brown neighborhoods that may have maybe in a transportation desert. And the last thing is a lesson from COVID is we have telehealth, teach people how to use telehealth, make that accessible, and encouraging doctors to expand their office hours because we know that people have 9-to-5 jobs, and you know, there should be a doctor's office that maybe a person can go to afterwards. And I believe the next slide is interview. So if Ruth can read that.
Okay, so I interviewed my friend Madali again. She goes to SUNY Geneseo. So this was highlighting transport. The question was asked, how far is your nearest doctor's office or medical center? She replied, my nearest doctor's office from my school is miles away. However, there is a health center, a part of SUNY Geneseo that provides certain medical services. There are also 2 urgent care centers, but the Sparatus bus doesn't directly stop in front of it either, and it may be a 10-minute walk to get there. If the bus comes to get you, other medical centers are about 30 minutes away in Rochester, where there are no buses to take you there. The next question I asked was, are there public transportation options available to get you there? She said very limited options, if any at all. You are better off relying on a friend with a car or remaining hurt because you can't find someone to take you to the urgent care hospitals in Rochester. Maya.
Yes. So I interviewed my friend John, and he lives in Drummersburg, close to Ithaca. And he was like, he also answered like the same questions about like how close to him in his town, like is his doctor's office and how can he get there. So there is one doctor's office in his town, but and a hospital close to him, but the doctor that he goes to is 30-minute drive away because everyone would go to the same doctor. So and in terms of public transportation, in order to get to his doctor that is 30 minutes away, it would take 2 hours by bus to get there, which is extremely inaccessible.
I just quickly read these posts I did earlier. In the last couple of years, living in my neighborhood, I've seen cases of people refusing to get life-saving treatment because they couldn't afford it. So it's like, man, so the healthcare system starts being for profit. We're going to continue to see our people's welfare in healthcare. They're not means wrong on that, but continue to serve it. Okay.
So why I doesn't really have any policies related to transportation, but I wanted to bring light to a program that I personally use and I'm grateful for. Federal law actually requires Medicaid, each state to have a transportation program for Medicaid enrollees. This is great because a lot of people on Medicaid either are low income or have a disability, so it really helps us get to the doctor. I will say that issues that I personally experience is that they're frequently late, so sometimes I end up missing my doctor's appointments or I have to dedicate half a day just to get to the doctor on time, which is ridiculous. But yeah, that's Medicaid transportation. Next.
So. Leave this stressing in slides, but it's not here, I'll send that real quick. So this one piece of policy that we're speaking on, which is healthcare for all New York. This coalition is dedicated to ensuring affordable, comprehensive, and quality healthcare. Why is a member of, all he said, why? The 2023 policy agenda. So Bill S2237/83020. 294,000 New Yorkers are currently excluded from healthcare coverage because they are immigrants. This bill would allow them to become eligible to enroll in essential plan. Separately, people over 65 and those who have disabilities are the only New Yorkers required to pass an access test to enroll in Medicaid. The coalition is advocating for this even more. Additionally, they are advocating for children to be guaranteed seamless coverage for the first 1,000 days of their life. Yes. And the Reproductive Freedom and Equity Act is bill number 8361A/S348B. This bill will increase actions for abortion care via providing funding to abortion providers and nonprofit organizations that ease receiving abortion care. It also ensures coverage of expenses such as travel, lodging, and childcare. Such expenses can prevent many low-income individuals from seeking and accessing care. Abortion care will be easier to access for people who are out of state, undocumented, and low income as a result of the bill, which means that many young adults that are out of state and in-state college students, undocumented, and low income will have increased access to abortion care. Yes. That was it was. What else was it? I have a short question. Yeah,
Say that there needs to be that it's really important that there's representation in our mental health facilities in order for individuals to seek out the help that they can only find with specific therapists.
So, I was just talking about this very close to this issue yesterday with my team. So New York City is getting ready to implement congestion pricing. And people who have to go for medical appointments now, they're saying that they're gonna get reimbursed by Medicare. And we all know that, that can be very dicey, if you're sick and stuff. I have a sick mom, so I know I have to keep her in the city. But, that's something that, that's gonna affect a lot of people who have medical issues, and they're not gonna be compensated for the transportation cost. So that's an issue that's going to affect a lot of people of color, especially in poor communities, South Bronx, Southeast Queens and all from. So it's interesting how this transportation is tying into this.
Thank you for listening.
That's the right for my family. They refer to as stress
Yes.
Yeah, it's awful. So, thank you for taking that. Bye. But that is good for the dance department when it that proposal and have like back the numbers, funds and things of that nature to like back up on it. I just really feel like that's really powerful, and I think that is something that is sometimes missed in presentation. So I think this is for including that. And then so that's what my main take with my other team, because I'm a CUNY alum as well, and I used to work on this app called Help Me App. Still a thing for what really happened to it. When I want to work on it, but it's really interesting to know, and I'm not at all surprised, but I guess I'm hearing it. That not only is there a lack of sort of like resources, but even the resources that exist are not great. Like that experience that you that was appropriate and successful. And that is someone who has been vetted and gone through the bureaucratic process of being an employee, which is starting, because that in of itself takes at least a couple months. So the fact that they, that person was hired, and that is the treatment that they provide, is definitely something. So it just makes me think that, it's not just finding resources, but also making sure that the resources that are being brought are like so yeah, great presentation.
Yeah, I just wanted to commend you guys for this amazing presentation. I know that talking very diverse topic. A lot of these things are kind of interacting or obviously I think one of the main key takeaways we have is personally I've always been an advocate for mental health, so it's something that I think even up to now we are constantly learning about the importance of mental health, and hopefully from this conversation go forward we will be adding to this. I think mental health, once we speak about it, people will know, and it will allow for better access for people to not be shy about it. It's not a taboo anymore. I will speak about it. But very important, we have mentioned about transportation. I think it's not a lot of people talk about it, but the first thing is access to care. If you don't bring our patient to the urgent care facilities, the hospital, that's the first thing that we have to do. I think you guys be bullseye, like transportation is it's, I don't bring my patients right at the right time, my patient time, whatever. But I think a lot of things we're tackling this, and I like the proposals you guys made. Probably the last one is, this, I think one more is the, yeah, those two things, if I remember later.
I just wanted to say, just to piggyback on some of what my friends around me have said, that, you know, obviously, like, having these policies that we can talk about, all the stats, all the research that y'all clearly did, it's incredibly impressive. But I want to thank you too for sharing your personal stories and your experiences with mental health, physical health, this healthcare system that we see is broken, that we see has. So it's just really impactful, and I think so important to this work that we are all trying to do together to try to take better care of each other is fighting each other and sharing these spaces and showing vulnerability to one another, which not only is a way for us to take care of each other, but for us to take care of ourselves and finding trust in other people and like sharing these experiences. So not just to this group today, but to everybody who shared, I just wanted to say thank you so much for bringing yourselves to this work because it's so powerful here. And that's what I'm
I just wanted to like lastly also, you know, piggyback off of what everyone said, that your presentation was fantastic and how it tackled so many intersectional issues that come up. Particularly speaking to folks who are differently able, I think there was so much expansion on that. And for me as a person who's really on the ground doing human services work, like y'all touched on things that I'm working on and talking to students about now. I remember as a case manager in a transitional housing shelter, finding out about Medicaid transportation for the first time was infuriating. When I was trying to figure out, you know, people who have been sitting in shelter for years who don't have a PCP, who've never been to the dentist, who have outstanding, you know, injuries from just arriving to this country, things that happened to them before. So the idea that one, the people who are represented in our universities, we want our medical issues addressed as well, right? Like getting good medical care is not like white people stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like medical care is a universal right. And you all have to like push that forward in a way that's really compelling and informative. So thank you so much.
Oh,
Just how do we uplift out of the Senate Assembly bills that you guys are, you know, presenting today? And although, you know, you mentioned the policy side, although the city.
Okay. Although public advocate, as he mentioned today earlier at the top of the event, that, you know, his office has passed more legislation than all of the previous public advocates prior to him. And so I know these are on the state level, but please share with the community and those that came today, aside from those call to actions, because the QR codes are going to be very useful in sharing. What other ways can we, I guess, outreach of letting folks know about these amazing bills, both on the Senate and Assembly side?
part of the reason is just more like people, part of the solution is regular people, because a lot of most of the people I spoke to on college campuses prior to me speaking, so I had no idea any of this exists. So it's like housing centers, medical centers, they didn't know that existed. Pantries, they didn't know that existed. So all this basic needs stuff, all this healthcare stuff that we're supposed to have access to as students, nobody knows that existed. So again, just going directly to people and telling them, this is what's out there, this is what's trying to be done, help us do that. They need y'all to help push it forward. Because most people, at least it's been my experience, most people when we tell them we have people or legislation pushing to help you, that activates them. They're like, oh word, I didn't know people actually care about this. So it's like that's one of those things So what the rest of the people?
I would say, this stuff is happening to students, so one thing I wanna uplift that you guys did so well was talk, like, speaking about the interviews, cause I think that on a young people level, like, we unfortunately, like, we learn from frustration, right? You know, like, I've worked with students, you know, this semester who wanna access the emergency grant, you know, so a lot of conversations with students for me looks like, oh, I didn't know about that, like, you know, and it actually could have saved me $2,000, $3,000. I don't know anything that gets somebody more fired up than trying to be preventative. And I think that CUNY students are preventative. I think all New York City people are. They ask the question at the appropriate time. It's just that services, while they lead with the word preventative, are not that. They, in fact, are quite limited and restricted, and they want you to reach out only in the case of an emergency. So I think that we continue, like what you would like to affirm what you said, you know, continuing to share even when those emergencies are not happening is so important because that's the only way that you interrupt them. You know, because right now what it looks like is one, so many people on campuses working outside of the scope of their practice. You know, the same professors who are responding to crisis situations, you know, that individual who worked in that mental health capacity, you know, who obviously was not culturally competent in any regard. And you know, for me, our initiative is focused on the Bronx, which is Black and Brown students primarily. So I definitely want to see a mental health team that reflects the needs of our community. So I would say, you know, just to back up what you said as well, keep having those conversations and having those testimonials because that is really compelling to folks and is compelling to other students too, because they see it and they're like, exactly, that's exactly what happened to me. And that's what gets people who are not normally in the conversation about legislation more interested, right? Because when you go SB 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I know certain people just check out right away, right? Just right away as soon as you get to that part. And that's just the reality. It has to do with the accessibility, it has to do with elitism, it has to do with so many things that you all touched on, really notably with racial disparities as well. So I would just say, keep going, and I hope that all of us will stay in community in terms of organizing around these things and continue to have the conversation.
Yeah.
You know,